Let the record show that we do have a quorum. Council members Schilling, Yeager, and Luger are all present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Council Member and veteran Dennis Schilling.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next we have open forum. Open forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the city council on items on or not on the current agenda. Items requiring council action may be deferred to staff or boards and commissions for research in future council agendas if appropriate. You will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask that you conduct yourself in a professional, courteous manner and refrain from the use of profanity. Failure to abide by this policy may result in the loss of your privilege to speak. We have several community members on the list for open forum. We can start with Mr. Rutford. Am I saying that correctly?
Good afternoon, Mayor. Afternoon, Council. What I'm here today about is the development that's going on behind my place. I live at 4700 East Viking Boulevard. I was at the meeting here a couple of weeks ago for the Planning Commission, and some stuff that was brought up to attention there. There's a few things that was really vague and got jumped over. One of them, the ones that says it's supposed to give enough area in these cul-de-sacs for snow. Define that one. That one where they're gonna put that snow. Their holding ponds are going up against my property and my neighbors. Where's all that water and that snow gonna run off when they do put it over there? This land is, they're putting it up, it's gonna be built up higher, so it's gonna go down the mine. Water runs downhill, not uphill. As I want that, I'd like to get addressed a little bit more closely. And there's some other facts in there with that one, as we only got one entrance to this area, back there to this area. What am I gonna do for public safety in that areas? You got one entrance in and out there, there's a fire. We don't have enough firemen, we don't have enough police department. How's our police gonna get back there in a timely manner at the same time? That's addressed. I also like to get addressed on the traffic control, this whole matter that's gonna go on there too. Who's in charge, who's paying for it, and where it's gonna be done? Why us taxpayers have to pay for new traffic control on 22 and have a safety order away. There's a school factor there too that the school board is being notified to about how we're gonna do this. We're putting all these houses in back there. What am I gonna do for schools? Wyoming school's only so big. Forest Lake is only so big there, folks. And then you got all the other towns around feeding into there. There's those factors in there. I have a few other factors. I did email each one of you guys this afternoon.
Okay,
there,
so it was.
and thank you, Linda, for reaching out to me and discussing some other different matters there and proper ways of showing it. One of the things is brought to my attention, and I brought it up to hers again, is you're running the city sewer and water through. I got perfect brand new septic system in my place when I bought it 3 years ago. My water's got probably the best water there is around an area. There's hardly any chlorine or anything else in there. It's so pure. I don't need it. I have over a 1,500 feet, if not longer, driveway. It was brought up to my attention in there that Fred mentioned that because it's a feasible thing, more likely I and my neighbors can not have to be in that. But still, like to see something be addressed in the concerns up there. As of the water, when they did their amendments and everything there, where did they do it? How long was that addressed it to them? Did they just do it for the 1 year, this past year? Which was a really unfair year because of the lack of snow we had. I own a property maintenance business. I can tell you right now how many times my trucks went out snow plowing this winter. It wasn't that much. Look at your self-bill, look at your bill of maintenance of your roads here this year. It's down any from any other year. There's that attraction. But I really like to know where's this water and everything, and how is it gonna guarantee my neighbors and the water not going onto us? And I do have to look at and really address, as we move forward with this, how is the safety of the community gonna be involved? One of the things addressed to me was there's these houses some of these are gonna be quote unquote rental low income type houses. What comes with that comes with some crime. Not all of them, but some. I got 10 acres of probably there to protect my woods, and they're not gonna go back there smoking or go anything else, or harming my trees, my wooded areas, my neighbors. How we're gonna address that? We have such a little police force in our town, and we're growing. Which way we're gonna go? Same thing with our fire department. I don't know if you've driven around the whole town area and look at the 5 different developments we got going on here, folks. 5. That's a lot of houses. You know, we have to address the public safety. Is it fair to our police department to only have 2 cops on at a time trying to patrol our town? 3? And trying to get the sheriffs over here? No. Same thing with our fire. There's a lot of different what ifs that have been overridden here on this thing. As if we're trying to move forward to do their development, there's a lot of blank areas where what's happening next. When I talk to the county, only half the people know what's going on over there. I had a road erosion out in front of my house. I talked to some county commissioners there. There's only one guy actually really knew what was going on over here. That's kind of sad. One person out of 7 of them there. So it makes it really hard. You know, who's on first, what's on second. Like I said, there's a lot of public safety problems here that needs to be addressed first before even proceeding anything on management of this land and even dig a hole that needs to be addressed. Who's gonna pay for the new pump for the sewer and water? That was addressed that the one they has does not handle what is over there when this development goes in. Who's gonna pay for that? Why does a taxpayer have to pay for that? I'm not living in that area. I don't plan on living in that area. My neighbors aren't planning on living in it. Residents that live in this town are not planning on living in that area. So why should we have to pay for that update? That's a lot of money on a taxpayer. Just like updating the roads. Why should we have to pay for the updates? There is those sides in there in this thing. Before, I'm glad you guys think on this before we move forward. Let's look at all these different what ifs and problems that we are running into. It's gonna happen, I understand that. But everybody's gotta be on the right page and keep everyone safe in our community. It is a growing community, it is, that's great. But there's a lot of safety factors that are not being addressed, they're getting overlooked. That's it, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Redford.
Thank you.
Staff, is this something that we can address further? Do we want to address some of the gentleman's concerns right now, or is it preferable to do that later on under agenda item 15?
I think we put together a pretty good list, Councilmember Lugar, and I think maybe once we give a presentation on the actual project, we'd be happy to go back through. I think I have most of the concerns that stated, and I believe our engineer does too, and our police chief. So I think we're all taking notes, so we can probably go through that list and try to go through those and provide some feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Sykes, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Gary Sykes. I live on East Lincoln Boulevard. I actually had 2 items. One of them's probably gonna be a simple answer, and then another one's more of a gripe. It's item 6 on your agenda. On the approval of people solicipating. I've had these solicitors in the community. They've been here visiting at my place for at least 2 or 3 times this week, one for windows. One of them said that they just did a project to get rid of pests. And I thought maybe, you'd be interested in getting rid of pests in the local area. But anyhow, they do these jobs and they come and it's kind of like having a phone go off in the middle of a meeting. You're sitting at home, you're enjoying your evening, and all of a sudden, bang, bang, bang. This guy actually, I was in my backyard, he jumps the fence, comes running down to me, and he wants to sell me pest control. I very nicely explained to him that the only pest that I wanted to get rid of at that particular time was him. And, but they want to sell windows, they want to sell things of that nature. Now, when we approve stuff like that, and I know that, people want to come and they want to take care of their business and come door to door, ask yourself the question, how many of you actually deal with a door-to-door salesman and say, yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for? We don't get the full brush man anymore, we don't get the encyclopedia man anymore, but people will come up to your home and they're trying to sell you things that, if you want it, you're gonna go shop for it. You're gonna go look at reviews, you're gonna review other people. So, I mean, so I would like people to, at the council, to consider those type of solicitations, you know, windows, pest control, or remodeling, or whatever it might be. It's really not something that, and again, if you have a concern about cutting people off, just think of that phone going off in the middle of your meeting. It's a nuisance too, and that's all it is nuisance. You know, I mean, when people are soliciting stuff like that. The other thing is I gotta put Rob Linwood and Mark on the hot seat here. How's the money coming for the road? I'll take it sitting down. Thank you, people.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Sykes.
Good question. I think we sent out somewhat of an update a little while back as well, but we are still waiting for a response from the federal government on a grant application that we had submitted. As you're aware, we discussed this in our feasibility study, the importance of that. Right now, we don't have the funds to construct the entire project as it is and are hopeful to receive grant funds to accommodate constructing the entirety of the improvements that we have identified. So right now, we're waiting for that, because if we go forward and find out we get a grant after we've already started, we don't get the money, right? So we have to wait. So we're doing our best. I know Mr. Linwood has had a number of correspondence with a number of individuals related to that grant application. It's in the queue, and so we just have not heard back yet. And so we're waiting to advertise for bids until we get notification on that grant. What I will say is our window, coupled with some of the shortages in construction materials, is not closed this year, but it is probably gonna be closed to complete the entirety of the project. We know that the box culvert, for instance, where we're gonna be replacing for the Sunrise River, we'll be lucky to get that by July of next year. And so just the materials that are available right now, particularly box culverts, some concrete structures. We don't have much for water main, for instance, but there's some issues of getting our hands on that type of material as well. And so certainly a different bidding climate than we're accustomed to, and we're waiting to make sure we have everything in front of us and know whether or not we have those funds. And then once we do, we're gonna advertise for bids and move forward with the project and allow the contractor to start this year, hopefully. And we'll have to figure out what materials he can get, but have a completion date into next year that could accommodate finishing the project next year is kind of what I feel is gonna happen. But again, we need to wait until we find out whether or not we have the grant at all.
So you feel like nothing's probably gonna happen until after we get the grant, or not even this end of it, it'll be the whole project will be?
Yeah, because if we bid the project, the grant funds are no longer available, right? We have to do things sequentially in order. And so we don't wanna jeopardize potentially receiving over $1 million that we've requested. That's certainly really important to our capital improvements program. And so we wanna make sure that we're really conscious of that. And so we do need to wait until we find out on the results of that grant. And so
So inflation's gonna have a huge impact on this project as it stands, and we're gonna have another meeting to let people know how they're gonna be impacted by that down the road.
So anytime we take bids on a project, we do evaluate and identify how did the project compare to a feasibility study and what we share with property owners. And so that will be an exercise that we do prior to awarding a contract once we have the bid results. And then we'll share that with individuals as well. Yeah, we're doing our best. It's just we're kind of handcuffed right now until we get the results of our request for additional funds.
All right, Mr. Bergen.
I'm sorry, before you go, in regards to the solicitor's
Oh, yes.
permit, I think that's one thing, you do have to have a permit to solicit in the city of Wyoming. So by all means, if anyone comes to your door, you can certainly ask them that question. If they do not, you can contact our police department because they should be able to identify themselves and say that they do have a permit from the city, otherwise they should not be doing that.
All say they do, and none of them can provide it.
Yeah, if they can't provide it,
Mr.
then
Linwood?
yes.
The permit is always in the car,
Yeah.
and they just didn't bring it with them.
Yeah.
Because we asked them, and then their heads explode, and they run away.
So, also, I guess maybe legally, if you have a no solicitation sign on your front door, you're not allowed to approach even with a permit, correct? Yep, that is a trespass then, so. I mean, it sounds weird putting a little sticker on your front door, but I don't ever answer my public phone anymore just because it literally is nothing but telemarketers.
Yeah.
And so,
I think that overall, though, there should be a concern for the number of strangers that might be running around in our neighborhoods now. I mean, our lifestyle in this country is changing, and it's changing fast. You know, and you never know what people are doing in the neighborhood, and I think a guy takes a big chance by running into my backyard and jumping the fence.
yeah.
They didn't have a good stick handy, so I just told him to leave.
But at least the firm that is on the consent agenda, they went and got a permit. And they did it all right. They went through their background checks and paid their fees and everything like that. So, I mean, I can't see denying that. But all the gentlemen and people that you say keep coming around, I get them at my door too. They just come, you ask for a permit, it's always in the car, it's always someplace else. And I don't know how to get rid of them.
At least they leave right away, so, you know, I wouldn't want to waste the police, their time down there chasing them around, trying to figure out where they're at now, but that's another issue for you.
We're more than willing to come out. It's not a concern. We can, as far as I know, there's only one solicitor that's actually completed the permit process, and that's this one tonight. So no one else has submitted permits up to this date.
There was one other group, what was that guy? Mr. Gary Loring for solid waste has one currently.
Okay.
So two.
So two right now. Yes.
Are you this guy or this guy? Not pest control. Okay. Mr. Bergen.
Thank you. This is just something pretty quick. Don't have any questions or anything. I'm just here to talk about the poor audio quality of the city council meetings when it comes to the live streams and the YouTube. That's how I've always watched the city council meeting since I first moved here. Breaks down into two simple things. First off, the overall audio is extremely quiet. In order for me to hear it, I have to turn everything up on my computer as high as it'll go, and then it's whispering in my ear. For the people who might not be as tech savvy as I am in our community, that might be hard to figure out how they can actually listen to the city council meetings. And the reason I bring this up is so that there's more engagement with the community and there's more transparency in that you can actually hear what is going on in these meetings when you watch them later. So the first one is just the overall volume being pretty quiet. What you can hear is you can almost always hear all the city council members perfectly fine. However, typically when non-city council members are speaking, it's completely inaudible. If you hear anything, it's just muttering. And I know there's been a few instances where there's been an entire proposal, like half-hour proposal, that you have no idea what it was said at all, and then you have council members asking questions you don't even know what they're responding to. So that's really all it was. I just want to see some improvement in that aspect. If the city would like help, I do have some experience dealing with streaming and this stuff, so I'm willing to offer help if wanted.
Okay.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
And sir, real quick, could you state your name and address, just for the record?
Joshua Bergen, 264-37 Forley Avenue.
Thank you. Okay, next up on the list is Ms. Brooks. Oh, okay. All right, Mr. Nelson.
Hello and good evening. I'm Matt Nelson. I'm at 4660 East Viking Boulevard. So I am just basically the property next to or adjacent to the development going up, and that was just basically my couple of questions and concerns for the evening. I'll try and keep it short. I don't plan on beating a dead horse here. My first kind of clarification, I guess it was like the last meeting, not this last one, excuse me, the last one last year was we're talking about the rezoning and moving the wetlands, and I thought it was going to be for like a 5-year plan, and they were going to kind of review from there. I guess I was unclear on that, so I was just kind of curious as to what the plan was for that, because it seemed like a year went by, and as my neighbor spoke, it was a very dry year, so it definitely changed things. I went from having mosquitoes to not having mosquitoes last year. But yeah, so that was the first thing. Obviously, as he stated, I have concerns with the, if you look at development, the Group 5, there's a plan for like a runoff pond, and that is right next door to my property. And I don't have pictures with me, but my property is actually about 2 or 3 feet lower than there at the beginning of that plan. So my concern is if there is any issues with that pond or runoff, whatever they call it, what will happen is it will head south, and that'll be my backyard. So obviously, those are my concerns, you know, with that. Looking at the, what is it here? It is the conditional use permit, number 8. There was a note in there about the use will generate minimal vehicular traffic on local streets. Obviously, with that new development we already have south of Holiday, and then with this development going in, that intersection is going to be a nightmare, as it already is, if anybody ever tries to cross there. So, I mean, obviously that is going to be another concern that I have. And then along with, as Ken spoke, the sewer and water coming in. I am new to Wyoming. I've enjoyed it the last couple of years I've been here. I moved from St. Paul, so it's definitely a big change of pace, slower environment, and I definitely enjoy it. And I'm part of my concern is I hope to keep it somewhat that way. With the sewer and water coming in, I do concern about the cost. I've done a lot of renovating in my house already, and I don't plan on spending a big chunk of change bringing this in. So if that is something that happens, and my questions will be, will there be a grandfathering in procedure if people already have had the sewer and water, or already have septic and well, if we'll be able to keep that? If not, if there will be any sort of assessment on taxes or something like that that could defer the payments, so if we do have to switch over, at least maybe we can break it up or something like that, you know, on some sort of scenario. So those are my main concerns. Like I said, I appreciate the moment to speak, and hopefully we can come to some kind of resolution, so.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
Are all of those questions that we can address during the
I
presentation?
think we can address them all
Okay.
during the presentation. We'll go through those.
Okay. All right. Then we will move on to approval of minutes. Number 1 is consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for May 17th, 2022. Do we have any questions or comments? Nope. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And it passes. Second item is consider approving the minutes of the budget work session meeting for the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for May 17th, 2022. Do we have any questions or comments? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right, we will move on to our consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull an item on the consent agenda for discussion?
No.
Okay, if not, do we have a motion to pass the entire consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay. Next is acknowledge receipt of reports of officers, boards, commissions, and department heads. Do we have, let's see, we need to acknowledge those. Would anybody like to pull anything for discussion?
No.
Okay. If not, then we're going to move on to communications. Communications is number 12, the Railroad Park Community Engagement Update. Mr. Sachs.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Lugar, council members. So as you may recall, at the last council meeting, council approved to have WSB work on getting updated construction costs, explore that phased construction approach, and perform more community engagement for that Railroad Park project. So far, WSB has completed that update of the social pinpoint page. I included that link in the packet. So they really kind of zoned in on the Railroad Park. You can easily comment anything you'd like to see. And then along with that, Miss Amberg from WSB did attend our Touch a Truck event this past Saturday. She had a table for gathering community input. She actually received a lot of people that stopped by at the table, gave input, or they scanned the QR code to comment on the social pinpoint at a later date. So Touch a Truck went really well, and I think having Miss Amberg there helped spread the word about Railroad Park. So that's my update. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Council questions?
No questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sachs. All right, new business, to consider Resolution 220652, a resolution approving the rezoning from rural residential 1 district R1 to mixed-use district Z22002 at property ID numbers all or part of 21.10302.00, 21.10302.20, and 21.10302.30. Mr. Weck.
Madam Mayor and council members, this is going to tie in with the next two items on the agenda, so the conditional use permit and the preliminary plat. Thanks. So the PowerPoint was done by Kim Lindquist. She's a planner with the WSB. She wasn't able to be here tonight, so, but the Avery Place is a rezoning from mixed use from the rural residential 1 district. There's a conditional use permit for the master plan and the planned unit development, and then the preliminary plat approval are the 3 items that have resolutions in front of you. Next slide. So it's located on East Viking Boulevard to the west of Interstate 35 and the Noga County border. It's a part of the old Greenwood Golf Course. The city already approved the plat of Sunrise Riverbank. The area to the north of this is all going to be a wetland bank. One of the questions was about the 5-year plan, and it does take that long for them to go through the review process to make sure the water is what the water conditions are. And I think if any place in the city, this probably has more water studies done on it from the previous floodplain ones, and so we have a really good idea of how the water works in this site. But there wasn't an application before as a wetland bank. Next slide. So the request is rezoned from the rural residential 1 district to the mixed use district. This is in compliance with our comprehensive plan. We plan on this area to be a mixed use. The development is asking for a mixed uses of a single family residential, the twin homes, and the row homes. So that's the mixed use part of it in this side of the development. Future plans for the other side for commercial will be different. There's 49 single family lots, 26 units for twin homes, and 54 units for row homes. That's 129 units for single families. Question came up about rental. It's not planned as a rental development, but then that does not preclude someone from buying it and then renting it out. The county does have a short-term rental licensing. So if they were going to do like a B&B, that would be licensed. But if they were just going to rent it out, a yearly lease, neither the city or the county has a licensing program on that. Next. So these next few slides are showing the proposed setbacks, and these are included as conditions of the planned unit development to set the different setbacks and lot areas. Since it's being done as a planned unit development, there's some variations. They use the city's R3, 4, and 5, or 3, 4, and 6 districts as a guide for lot sizes and setbacks, and these are pretty consistent with those guidelines. So this one's and the house plans that you see here, and also in the council packet. They're some of the proposed designs for the buildings that will be out there for single-family homes. I believe they have Creative Homes. It's going to be the exclusive builder for the single families. I'm not sure about the twins and the row homes. Creative Homes did the Liberty Ponds development, or did the majority of the homes over there. Next slide. And these are the setbacks for the twin homes and the row homes, and those are 4 and 6 plexes. Utility plans, I think I'm going to let Engineer Mark Erickson address these parts.
Thank you, Mr. Weck. If you want any additional detail, please let me know, but I'll try to go over just at a high level here. Just starting with water infrastructure, the city will be extending water main from the water tower, the most recent water tower there off of 273rd, underneath the freeway and to their property line. That is something that was discussed at a work session, and feedback was provided to the developer. And that is a trunk water main extension, so the greater system-wide improvements, which typically are not borne by a developer. And so we're looking at providing that. There are water and sewer availability charges that are charged to a developer for each and every lot that they build to cover costs like this, and it's well in excess of what will be the cost of extending this here. But there are other expenses like the water tower that was constructed and other things. So I just want to quickly highlight that, that's the reason why those are an expense of the city. There's a downstream lift station that is to serve the greater community need beyond just this development as well. An upgrade, pretty minor, I would say, when the grand scheme of things, but that too would be a city expense. The lift station within the site, no, when I say lift station, it's a sanitary sewer pumping station, because it's not, the gravity sewer is not deep enough to service the entire development. That lift station will be 100% paid by the developer. And so I just wanted to quick highlight those things. But again, the sanitary sewer and water main will be extended to the site at the developer's expense from the northwest quadrant of Kettle and East Viking Boulevard. It'll
Mr.
extend,
Erickson?
pardon me?
Mr. Erickson, when, for the other expenses that the city bears, such as upgrading the lift station that serves the entire community, those costs are either going to be paid for with grant money, or they will be borne by the ratepayers on the city sewer and water. So the taxpayers will not bear these costs.
Right, we collect the water availability and sewer availability charges with each lot, and
Right.
that accumulates significantly over the 139 units plus the apartment units. It's pretty significant number, in excess of what would have for the trunk water as well as the sewer, so you're correct.
Right, now, a question had come to me about whether these costs would be borne by the taxpayers among the entire city, especially those who are not on sewer and water. So I just wanted to have that clarified.
I tried to make that, and drawing more attention to it is important, so that is a correct statement, that it won't be borne by the greater community tax dollars. So sewer and water extended from near the village. They have a little bit of work to do to coordinate and get easements to extend that. That is a condition of approval as well. So they're working through some of those items there, but it'll extend through I'm gonna call it the commercial property, to provide sewer service and water service to the properties. We're hearing from the development team that it's proposed to do the project in phases. The first phase would provide that access from East Viking Boulevard and provide access to the parcels, I'm gonna call it below the green dash line. That's the parcels that can be served by gravity, sanitary sewer and water, and not rely on that lift station that they would then construct in their second phase. Again, we've talked previously about the extension of water along East Viking Boulevard from their entrance there across from Viking Lane, all the way back towards the village. And there was just discussions about whose responsibility would be. They're already extending water into the site from multiple locations, and not necessarily in this location. And so we've talked among staff, and certainly if it's not gonna be the developer, it's not gonna be the city, it would be a future development at some point that would extend that, provide sewer and provide really sewer and water service to any other developable area in that vicinity. And so, one, we have the ability to provide water service to the site of adequate nature to provide pressure, volume, fire protection with the 12-inch main from under the freeway and the 8-inch coming up through the commercial site from the village. And so we have that. It's a number of units that build out 139 that would have really service from one direction and not be a looped system, which is certainly preferred, but something that in this case we can proceed without that if that's the council's direction. But it's something that we would not recommend that the city go through that expense at this time to make that loop. Stormwater we've had, and so I think that might address a couple of the questions.
I do actually have a question,
Yeah.
Mr. Erickson. So if we do the one direction at this time without the loop, we can still isolate that side, I'm assuming, in the event that we have an issue over there?
Yeah, I mean, it'll, if we have one, depending on where that water main break may
Right.
occur, right? Downstream of that, right, would have the water, depending on where that is, the homes may be out of water until that repair can be made.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Without that water extending along East Viking, that might alleviate some concerns from property owners regarding sewer and water service and availability and timeline to connect. If it's not there, it's not available for them to connect. And so I think that might temporarily resolve some of those until at such time in the future that water main would be constructed. Let me just make sure I didn't have any other, if we missed any questions, we'll go through our list here at the conclusion. I'll try to weave as many into the presentation as I can. Stormwater was another question that both residents had brought up. I think Fred covered the one question, regarding the wetland bank that was being created. And I'll just mention that the project is really broken into, I'll call 3 categories. One is the wetland bank, one is the residential component of the development, and the other is the commercial or apartment and hotel portion of the development. The first portion that they began working on really was the wetland bank. That is still in progress and not implemented at this stage yet, but it will be a 5-year monitoring period to ensure that what they identified as creating of a wetland bank does indeed meet the criteria of being a wetland. And so that is a process that will take place over time. It does preserve a very large portion of the overall site that they did have to wetland, and they'll create that wetland bank. The portion that we're really speaking this evening is the residential component. There are a number of stormwater ponds. I know a property owner had raised a couple questions regarding concerns about drainage and additional drainage onto their property. And so one, I'd be happy to meet and go through in detail and try to explain it. It's hard to use words to explain it, but we can certainly try here this evening. But one thing, the city of Wyoming does have very strict stormwater regulations, and they are consistent with the Comfort Lake, Forest Lake Watershed District. And I'll try to summarize at a very high level. The developer's engineer is responsible to evaluate drainage based on the contours of the land. And they look at each discharge point, where drainage leaves the site. And it may, in current conditions, it does leave the site and shed onto their properties currently. We do evaluate what that drainage rate is, what that volume is in various different rainfall events. And so it has no bearing on what the weather was last year, right? It's a 100-year event, the 10-year event, the 5-year event, the 1-year event. So we look at all these various rainfall intensities based on those events, and we identify what the runoff rate is and the volume is on each of those discharge points, and they can't increase that. And so they've shown that they've decreased it to the property owner that had raised the initial concern. I'd be happy to go over that and show the drainage area is significantly less than it was previously, but there is a little bit more intensity to it because there's a rooftop. It's really from the rooftops back. Everything drains to the street and drains away from his property. So the drainage area is significantly less. The amount that's leaving and discharging to his property is less. Be happy to go through that. I've talked to the engineer. He's looking at even ways to not have that infiltration basin on the rear discharge into his property, but into their network and out to the wetland bank. So we can look at those things for each of those adjacent properties. I'd be happy to meet with any of the property owners in person and kind of go through the actual drainage area maps and the calculations and all of that and show what the existing rate was to their property and what the proposed rate is to their property. I can go through all of those results. If property owners would like, they can certainly reach out to me, and I'd be happy to meet in person with you during the day or after hours as well.
But you'd be able to reassure the property owners that when they say that the pond is higher in the new development than on their properties, that this is not going to be a problem, that the water will not flood their properties, and our stormwater drains or drainage will be sufficient to keep it on the development's property.
Not exactly, because it will, if water goes there now, it will in the future
Continue
as
to
well,
go
right? So
there.
it's not gonna be increased from what is there now.
Okay.
So we're not gonna say that we're gonna starve the existing wetlands on their property, because then we would get in trouble for cutting off hydrology to maintain wetlands, and that would be a wetland impact, which we can't do. So it is a fine line, and so we'll certainly go through that in a little bit more detail if the property owners would like. Like I said, it's very difficult to do in a setting like this, but I'd be happy to do that.
I'll just pause right there. Mr. Rutford and Mr. Nelson, can we get you connected with Mr. Erickson either after the meeting or sometime in the near future so that he can explain that, like one-on-ones?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
So there are a number of conditions. We've provided the applicant's engineer a number of comments. There's a number of comments and conditions that have been provided, and we'll continue to work with the applicant on those. This is the preliminary plat. They'll be coming back forward with the final plat for their first phase as well. We'll work to finalize the preliminary plat, which they'll dissect and create their final plat for their first phase from.
Okay. Do we have any questions?
No, not at this time.
I did have a question about a couple of the conditions on the preliminary plat. Number 9 and number 20, are they kind of redundant? Where the snow's going?
So that was a question. Maybe as Fred and Rob are looking at those two conditions, maybe I'll just make sure that we address those. And so one was a question that had come up at the preliminary or at the public hearing previously, was the cul-de-sac, and specifically, where snow storage would go. And we are recommending, and we've shared this with the applicant, that there are not sidewalks that go around the perimeter of the cul-de-sacs, right? There's just no room to put snow there, and you typically don't see that, but you see them. There's two cul-de-sacs that have a little bit longer length, that we are just having the sidewalk extend up to the bulb of the cul-de-sac. The other one is extremely short, and we're not recommending any sidewalk on that one at all. And so we have made those recommendations to them. As far as drainage goes, that's all part of our calculations with our drainage analysis and where the stormwater goes, and so that we can share that with the property owners as well.
Well, how about number 20? I mean, 9 deals with the cul-de-sacs. Number 20 says that snow storage areas are provided, including easements where needed. Is that for the entire development?
Right.
Okay.
And most of that is public right of way.
Okay.
Try-
Order 9, the 44-foot on the curb line, that's more of a property line issue, just the width of the lot there, the skinniest point where it is.
Okay.
And they have provided some changes to that immediately following the meeting. I think they started working on that as they read our staff report, and were prepared following the meeting the following day with a proposal that met that criteria. So we know that that can be accomplished.
Okay. And then change the subject a little bit. The residents were concerned about the traffic. How is the county's traffic study going? I tried to reach out to Commissioner Motska this afternoon, and he was on his way out of town. So.
Okay, so we have a meeting on that tomorrow with Chisago County. We'll be reviewing that, but it has, we've looked at a number of different things, and one, we know that there's existing conditions there that warrant some improvements, and certainly in the long term. And so we're really trying to be conscientious about how we evaluate what improvements are needed at that, really in that corridor, but more importantly, along the interchange in Kettle River. That area really gets congested, and so we've looked at, one, some interim improvements that can accommodate the development, whether that means right and left turn lanes that they're gonna be constructing as part of their first entrance and their second entrance for the residential portion, and then more importantly, is what we're gonna do here at Kettle River and how we're gonna handle that. And we've talked, I can tell you what I think is gonna happen, but we're proposing to have a work session, and I haven't shared this with Mr. Linwood yet, but prior to the next city council meeting, and maybe I did share that with you, yeah, have that prior to the next city council meeting to really share the results of some of the discussions and some of the preliminary work that we've had with Chisago County. We've had some interaction with MnDOT, but we've still not yet received feedback from them on that, which is important. But I think we definitely want to share what the long-term vision is for that corridor, and then what we can do in the interim Because certainly we would not propose that the developer be responsible for the ultimate fix that currently has probably 99% of the traffic on it versus their small portion of the development, right? And so we need to be understanding what is important that they implement now that won't adversely affect until the long-term improvements can be made. And so there are some interim improvements that we would propose.
Who typically pays for these improvements?
You know, the developer will pay for the improvements that are necessary for their development, and we'll highlight that. We'll make sure to go through those things. And really, I think that right now with the first phase, the developer will be responsible for the turn lanes on the county road, and their engineers prepared plans. We have not seen them yet. The county has not seen them yet, but I think there's 30 or 40 plan sheets that identify what they need to do for the improvements along the county road. And so we'll evaluate and review that and approve whatever they submit. Not whatever they submit. We'll approve and work through that process of approving plans there. As far as the commercial portion, we have not fully evaluated that yet. We're working through that, but we do. I would feel very comfortable saying that we feel that strong consideration should be given to realigning Kettle River Boulevard and getting that further away from the interchange. We know that that's problematic. There's some considerations for the south leg of Kettle River Boulevard and what may happen there as well. There's a lot of limitations. We know that there's existing business. We know that there's the river. So we have some thoughts and ideas, some pretty creative ways to look at things for the long-term improvements that we'd like to share, just to make sure that the council, if there's something that needs to come off the table, we want to make sure we know that. The same goes for MnDOT. We don't want to go through a number of different iterations as far as what the long-term improvements are if they're not going to even be considered by MnDOT. They did in our initial meetings throw a couple of them off the table. We just haven't heard the rest of them, and so we really want to make sure we hear and take their feedback before we move much further with that study.
Okay. Mr. Erickson, when you say that you're meeting with Chisago County, can you specify who? Just so that we can reassure residents that Chisago County is privy to the process and
Yeah.
the relevant, members of the county commission and related departments know what's going on.
Yeah, so when I say we meet with Chisago County, it is their Chisago County Public Works and County Engineer. And so oftentimes, he's working through a process. It's at very high level. I know I've shared with you guys that we're doing the study. I'm certain that he's shared with the county commission that they're paying for the study actually. And so I'm sure that they're aware of it. They may not be aware of every little incremental rut or erosion or things on their network, but their county engineer should be the person that is contacted regarding those types of things, and he would then convey either with repairs with his staff or convey the need to the county commission. But the county engineer is the main person that we're working with at this stage.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question about that's a little bit related to traffic control. There was a concern that was brought forward about police and fire. And Chief Bauer, can you kind of speak to what our city's capabilities are for addressing those concerns? And
Sure.
influx of residents?
Sure. Those are all things that we will consider as time goes on, as population increases. I'm working on a staffing study right now to determine kind of what that looks like as the years go, as our population increases, what that would mean for us. In comparable cities and looking at what our population could look like, does that mean maybe that there's a need? But it's not just population that matters. It's also what crimes are happening in our city, what type of things do we want our officers to be involved with, what type of community engagement we want them to be doing. There's a lot of different factors that we consider in a new neighborhood. Just the increase of population, do you end up with additional calls for service? Do you end up with more medicals, fire service? Absolutely. That's a given. Now the scope of that, I wouldn't anticipate that would be astronomical beyond what our resources can handle. I don't anticipate that. I don't have the map in front of me here. I think there was some access questions as well, and I can't really speak to that without looking at that. But engineering can speak to that as well about access, vehicles parked on the roadways. You know, new neighborhoods are developed with that consideration. So it doesn't raise any red flags for me looking at the development, and it's all part of the conversation that we're having on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you.
The one last item, I think, on the list of questions in regards to the local schools in the Forest Lake School District. I think that's one thing that I am contacted probably at least twice a year by our superintendent of Forest Lake Schools, asking about future development, because that equals enrollment for the schools. So the development, the new homes, that's something that they're actually looking for. So that is, they're often, myself and Mr. Weck will work on to try to provide them with any of those updated lots, numbers, et cetera. So they're very, very interested always to see what kind of growth is going on in our city and how that it may impact the schools.
Right. And typically, I know from, being in the school districts that per pupil funding is largely contingent on student enrollment. And so typically, all school districts, public school districts in the state of Minnesota welcome an increase in enrollment because it means more funding from a state level as well. Do we have any other? Yes, Mr. Weck.
One other question they had was about the existing septic systems.
Oh,
Yes.
Thank you.
Merger agreement between the city and the township provided that if city sewer and water became available to a township resident, they had 5-year grace period or grandfathering in to allow them to use their existing septic system, so that would apply here. The other part is the state building code and plumbing code, excuse me, do require hooking up to city sewer and water when available, but when it's feasible. So if they've got a 1,500-foot long driveway, that probably would not be feasible to do. So we'd have to look at it case-by-case basis, but again, it has to be feasible to make that connection also.
Yeah, I know that where I work, City of West St. Paul, we have half dozen lots that are off of Wentworth, which is really right in the heart of our town. And all of them are back several thousand feet. And when we ran sewer and water, that was the major concern. But again, because it's not cost effective for us to charge them or the taxpayers to pay it, we kind of grandfathered those lots. And again, it was based on the ones that were far away, not the ones that were up against the boulevard, so.
One last component with that, I think Mr. Weck talked about it, but if there was a case where we did have individuals hooking up to sewer or water, past practices we have allowed, I think there was a question probably from Mr. Nelson in regards to would that be amortized or assessed over a period of time, and yes, that has been the past practice of the city, that would be over a period of time if that were to happen.
Thank you. Mr. Rutford and Mr. Nelson, do you feel that kind of covers some of the concerns or most of the concerns that you spoke about tonight earlier? And if not, do you feel comfortable going forward and working with Mr. Erickson and city staff to answer any further questions?
For me, I think that covered most all of them.
Okay.
The only concern I had was just when the zoning map showed, it showed the switches in color from what the residentials were, and that involved my block. On the last meeting, I was pretty sure that the zoning switch was only for the preliminary plot and did not involve my lot. So I guess that'd be the only thing I just wanted clarification on, just to make sure.
Okay.
So the second map that showed the color over everything, including their lots, is the comprehensive plan map. So that's the long-range plan. So if you were to sell or you develop, that would be the plan, would be to do another mixed use as part of that. So you staying there and not planning on doing anything, you don't have to worry about it changing. It'll stay the same. So your zoning won't change until either you are ready to develop or you sell it to someone that's ready to develop and they want to change it to mixed use.
Mr. Rutford?
I'm still kind of, where's the insurance of feasible to do this in 5 years if we had to have it done? The city sewer and water. Like I said, my driveway's 15 to 2,000 feet long. I know Matt's is about the same. Neighbor in between us, they got really weird access. What is feasible? What define that one as a city?
How do we define feasibility?
Well, I guess we have to.
Where's our insurance here that we know that what we gotta look at? Long-term, I know Matt's looking at long-term, I'm looking at long-term here, members of the city here. Where's our insurance that, I'm putting a lot of money in my house, he's doing too, they were all rentals. Remodeling, making them look nice. how do we know that we're gonna be fine on this on the long term?
Let me look at this.
We would, again, we'd have to evaluate each lot, but if you have a 1,500-foot driveway, you're not gonna be able to gravity feed from your lot to the city sewer. So I would say that's probably infeasible. If you did not, if you had a small lot and had no area for a septic system so that you had no choice, then the feasibility changes, because now you have no other choice. So the cost to make that hookup is a public health reason. So again, without looking at exactly what you have, I can say, you know, that with a 1,500-foot driveway, it's probably not feasible for you to gravity feed to the city sewer and water. There would be a 5-year, if once the city sewer and water went in front of your house, then there'd be 5 years before you would have to hook up to it. So that'd be time enough to look at the feasibility also of it.
I have a question, Mr. Weck. Goodview, south of let me rephrase that, east of Goodview, those are all well and septic.
Except for some of the ones that had city sewer and water went in front of them, and they did connect, some of them sooner rather than later, but some of
Okay.
them went for the whole 5 years.
Because I know.
But those lots were, houses about 40 feet off the right of way.
Right.
So those were feasible to do.
Okay.
Same-
And that's
same
kind
set.
of, when I look at their 3 properties here, they're so far back. I mean, logically, it wouldn't be something, in my opinion, if I sat on council, in the event that that happened, it would be something I would recommend or ask for, just because of the distance. It's just an expensive cost. So,
Mr. Linwood?
Just want to make sure the council's aware of the
I think-
literature.
running water, right?
Pardon me?
We're not putting the water through there right now.
No, so I think we're not putting it along the county road, but I think there's a question we can certainly evaluate and look a little bit closer. If there is a desire, potentially they may want to consider having at least a service stop. We actually would have utilities that would actually be closer to their house on the backside, right? Because this service road, what the utilities are coming in along the back sides of the lot. And so that might actually be much closer to their residents than, for instance, coming along the county road if they have 1,500-foot deep lots. And so I can look at that much closer and to see what feasibility there would be. If they have interest, they might want to have that and not have to dig into our road in the future. If they wanted to have sewer water in the future, and it sounds like they don't, but I think we should at least consider and look at that a little bit closer and make sure that if, you know, we always look at adjacent parcels and look at extending utilities to them so that we're not excavating into our roadway to connect to them in the future. And so we should look at and evaluate that closer. I know we are requiring the developer to extend it in some areas to provide sewer service to the property so that they're not burdened with those costs in the future. But we should look at that and evaluate that. We can certainly do that. We're not proposing anything at this stage, but we could certainly look at that a little bit closer. I just want to be open about that we should look at that a little closer. And if the property owners would like, I can certainly include that with our meeting regarding drainage if they want to have that meeting.
Yeah, even looking at, just on the GIS from back of the properties, there's still over 400 feet from each house to the front. The longest is Ken's driveway at 523 from house to boulevard, so.
Okay.
So, yeah,
So
they're,
it's still pretty significant.
yeah,
Yes.
they definitely are, even through the rear, so. Okay.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution 220652?
So moved.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to.
I
get
will
pulled up
second.
here.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that is approved. Number 14, to consider Resolution 220653, a resolution approving conditional use permit C-2201 for a planned unit development master plan for Land Development Company of Wyoming LLC, Richard Morris, property ID numbers all or part of 21.10302.00, 21.10302.20, and 21.10302.30.
Did you get all
Do
those?
we have, I think so. Ready to be an auctioneer. Do we have any questions on this?
This is gonna
Okay.
follow up.
If not, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Number 15, to consider Resolution 220654, a a resolution approving preliminary plat D22007, approval of the preliminary plat Avery Place location, East Viking Boulevard, Sunrise Riverbank, applicant Land Development Company of Wyoming LLC, Richard Morris, property ID numbers, all are part of 21.10302, .00, 21.10302.20, and 21.10302.30. Do we have any further questions on this? And do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. We will move on to agenda item number 16, to consider rescheduling the June 8th, 2022 budget work session to June 21st, 2022 at 5:30 PM. Mr. Linwood.
Yes, Acting Mayor Lugar, this item, as originally we had this, we tried to give council notification on this, that we would not have a quorum for our meeting on the 8th. Staff is recommending that we move that meeting to the 21st prior to our normally scheduled council meeting at 5:30. So I know Mr. Erickson had talked about potentially that study, but we can talk about that too, in regards if that could be fit into that normal budget work session. So, but that is the recommendation from staff, to move that meeting to the 21st at 5:30.
Does the 21st work for council?
Works for me.
It works for me as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, what are we gonna do about Mr. Erickson?
I think we can, it fits within the scope, in regards to budget. I know we'll have our staff, it's kind of our first, overview of our department head budgets, but I think we'll have some time. We have a few other things in regards, that could be a budget impact, item too. So I think we'll try to fit everything in, and if not, we can, at that point in time at that meeting, if we need to schedule another work session, we can certainly work with council, to do so, if it was in that next week, or that maybe prior to that next July meeting. So we'll work with you to try to get that information, make sure it's shared.
Okay. Do you need a motion from us on that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve a rescheduling of the budget work session to June 21st?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it passes. That brings us to council reports. Member Yeager, would you
No
like to start?
report. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you all for watching.
Member Schilling.
I attended the EDA meeting yesterday, special EDA, well, I guess rescheduled EDA meeting yesterday. Thank you all for coming in and voicing your concerns and watching, and that's my report.
All right. I attended the budget work session on the 17th, as well as the Park Advisory Commission meeting yesterday, as well as the Joint Park Planning Board meeting last week. And thank you all for attending and watching. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.